The Galactic Council had watched Earth for centuries, classifying it as a death world, a planet so hostile that survival was a constant struggle. Yet, despite the harsh environment, the dominant species, humans, were dismissed as insignificant. They lacked interstellar travel, they relied on primitive resources, and worst of all, they seemed reckless. The Zorvak Empire, known for its ruthless conquests, saw Earth as nothing more than an easy target. The Council did not interfere. After all, what could a single pre-spaceflight species possibly do against an empire that had crushed civilizations across the galaxy? Zorvak warships entered Earth's orbit undetected, their cloaking technology ensuring complete invisibility. Their strategy was simple: paralyze Earth's defenses in one swift strike. The fleet commander, General Vorka, smirked as he watched Earth through the massive viewport of his flagship. "Primitive," he muttered. "They won't even know what happened." He gave the order. Within seconds, a dozen kinetic bombardments were launched toward major human cities. Weapons designed to shatter mountains hurtled toward Earth at unimaginable speeds. On any other planet, this would have meant instant surrender. But something was wrong. The missiles never hit. Vorka's smirk faded as the screen displayed unexpected interference. The projectiles vanished mid-air, disrupted by an unknown force. His communications officer turned, his face pale. "Sir, their systems intercepted the attack before impact." Vorka's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. They don't have planetary shields." Then, how did they stop it? Before anyone could answer, Earth's response began. The entire planet went dark. Every satellite, every broadcasting signal, gone. For a brief moment, it was as if Earth had disappeared. Then new signals emerged, overriding the Zorvak fleet's systems. Their own ship's monitors flashed with a single message in an unfamiliar but eerily confident tone. "We see you." A chill ran down Vorka's spine. He had invaded countless worlds. He had seen fear, desperation, and surrender. But this was something else. "Engage active scans," he barked. "I want to know what's happening." His words were cut short as alarms blared across the bridge. The fleet's cloaking systems failed. A wave of electromagnetic disruption rippled through their ships, exposing them to every radar system on Earth. Then Earth's defenses activated, not in panic, but with terrifying precision. Hundreds of small, agile crafts launched from the surface, each moving too fast for Zorvak targeting systems to lock onto. They weren't just fighting back. They were hunting. "Sir, there." The flagship shuddered violently. A Zorvak battleship, one of the largest in the fleet, had just been taken down in seconds. The crew watched in horror as a force they had deemed primitive tore through their numbers with tactics they had never encountered. Vorka gripped his console, realization sinking in. The Council had been wrong. The Zorvaks had been wrong. The humans were not the prey. They were the apex predators. And they had just begun. General Vorka had never experienced fear in battle. The Zorvak Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, their victories effortless, their enemies crumbling in days. But as he watched the chaos unfolding in Earth's orbit, a cold realization settled in his chest. The humans were not responding with desperation. They were not begging for mercy. They were retaliating with a precision he had never seen before. "Shields up. Target those crafts." Vorka barked, but the commands came too late. The small, agile human fighters zipped through space with impossible speed, weaving between Zorvak warships. They didn't rely on brute force. Instead, they struck at critical weak points, targeting weapon systems, engines, and communications. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver was deliberate. The Zorvak ships, built for large-scale planetary destruction, were not prepared for this kind of warfare. Their targeting systems struggled to lock onto the unpredictable human crafts. Within minutes, 5 Zorvak destroyers were nothing more than burning wreckage, their massive forms drifting lifelessly in space. Vorka clenched his fists. How are they doing this? His communications officer's hands trembled as he tried to re-establish contact with their fleet. Sir, it's not just their ships. Our systems, our entire network, has been compromised. Vorka's blood ran cold. Human forces weren't just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with information. Earth's defense network had infiltrated the Zorvik fleet, overriding their internal communications. Orders were scrambled, sensor data was falsified, and entire sections of the fleet found themselves cut off from one another. Panic spread like wildfire. A transmission crackled through the flagship's speakers. The voice was calm, almost amused. Zorvik Empire, you made a mistake. The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned toward the speakers, their scales darkening in fear. You assumed we were weak. You assumed we wouldn't fight back. You assumed we wouldn't win. A pause. Then the voice dropped to a chilling whisper. You assumed wrong. A massive explosion rocked the flagship. One of their primary battleships had been torn apart from the inside. Sabotage. Human operatives had somehow boarded the vessel, dismantling it before anyone even realized they were there. Vorka's mind raced. How? How could a pre-spaceflight species execute an assault with such precision? He had fought empires with fleets 100 times this size, and yet no one had ever dismantled his forces like this. He turned to his navigation officer. Prepare for emergency withdrawal. The officer hesitated. Sir, we can't just. A low, menacing hum filled the bridge. The viewports dimmed as something massive emerged from Earth's shadow. Vorka's breath caught in his throat. It was a human warship. A warship unlike anything the Zorvaks had encountered. Sleek, dark, and brimming with unknown technology. It moved with predatory grace. It wasn't large like a Zorvak dreadnought. It didn't need to be. It was designed to kill. The transmission returned, the human voice laced with quiet menace. This is your only warning. Leave. Now. For the first time in his career, General Vorka hesitated. For the first time, he considered retreat. For the first time, he felt fear. General Vorka had faced resistance before. He had fought warlords, crushed rebellions, and conquered entire star systems. But never, not once, had he seen an enemy fight like this. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were dismantling his fleet. Sir, we've lost contact with the Varkal Androska, his communications officer reported, voice shaking. Jornak 7 has been neutralized. Our fleet is down by 30%. 30%? That was impossible. Vorka turned to the tactical display, his 4 eyes narrowing. The humans weren't engaging in direct combat like the other galactic species. They'd fought like assassins, targeting key systems, disabling ships instead of destroying them outright, rendering their enemies helpless before the kill. A Zorvik officer shrieked in alarm. Sir, multiple enemy ships have broken through our formation. Vorka's stomach sank. That wasn't supposed to happen. No species in the galaxy had ever managed to break formation of a Zorvik fleet. Their military doctrine was built on overwhelming force, massive numbers, and unbreakable defensive lines. And yet, here they were. The human warship leading the charge moved unlike anything Vorka had seen before. It twisted and turned in ways that defied logic, slipping past Zorvak weapons fire as if it knew where the shots would land. It didn't just evade attacks, it anticipated them. Then, in an instant, the warship unleashed its own counterattack. Blinding arcs of blue energy erupted from its hull, not as chaotic bursts of fire, but as precise, pinpointed strikes. One by one, Zorvik engines were ruptured, their ships spinning helplessly into the void. Vorka watched in growing horror. Humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to send a message. A priority transmission flashed on his screen, an urgent distress call from Admiral Korath, one of the most experienced commanders in the fleet. General. Korath's voice was strained, static-filled. We are being hunted. Hunted. Vorka felt something stir in his gut. The Zorvacs had always been the apex predators of the galaxy. They dominated. They controlled. But now, for the first time, they understood what it felt like to be prey. A sudden beeping on the control panel yanked him from his thoughts. A massive surge in energy was detected, coming from Earth itself. "What is that?" Vorka demanded. A deep hum filled the bridge as something activated on the planet's surface. The clouds parted. A structure hidden beneath Earth's atmosphere came online, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. "Sir," an officer whispered, his voice barely audible. "That's not a planetary defense system." The glow intensified. A ripple spread across space, enveloping the battlefield in an unseen force. The flagship's controls flickered. Zorvac ships shuddered. Navigation systems failed. Vorka's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. Earth had just seized control of the battlefield, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Panic spread through the Zorvac fleet like wildfire. Systems flickered, engines sputtered, and targeting computers refused to lock onto anything. The once mighty warships, which had terrorized countless civilizations, were now adrift, helpless in the void. General Vorka gripped the console, his claws digging into the metal. This wasn't just a counterattack. This was a statement. Humans didn't just fight their enemies. They neutralized them. "Status report." Vorka barked, but his officers were scrambling in chaos. "Sir, our thrusters are failing." One shouted. "Weapon systems are offline." Another cried. Vorka's breathing grew heavy. This wasn't a conventional battle. This was control. Humanity hadn't just developed planetary defenses. They had created a battlefield-wide suppression system, and they had just turned it on. A new transmission cut through the static. The same calm voice that had spoken before. "General Vorka of the Zorvac Empire." The entire bridge fell silent. "You came to our planet unprovoked. You believed we were weak. You were wrong." The human warship, the Predator, glided through the remains of the Zorvac fleet like a shadow. It was hunting. Suddenly, the screen in front of Vorka changed. It no longer displayed fleet statistics or damage reports. Instead, it showed Earth. A live feed. Cities bustling. People walking, laughing, working, completely unbothered, unafraid. "This is what you tried to destroy," the human voice continued. "And yet, your people screamed louder than ours." Vorka's blood ran cold. They were showing him this on purpose. They were saying, "This is how little we fear you." "Sir," an officer interrupted, "we've lost 40% of our forces. We need tow." The ship lurched. Something hit them. No, not hit. Boarded. Alarms blared as heavy thuds echoed through the corridors. The Zorvacs had never been boarded before. They were the ones who invaded. But the humans were already inside. Screams erupted over the internal comms. Officers turned pale as the sounds of combat filled the bridge. Fast, brutal, efficient. Vorka's mind reeled. How had they? The doors hissed open. A group of armored figures strode in, their weapons still smoking. They moved with eerie precision, scanning the room like predators sizing up prey. At their center stood a single human, their helmet retracting to reveal sharp, focused eyes. No anger, no hatred, just cold calculation. Vorka took a step back. For the first time, he understood. The humans had never been prey. They had just been waiting for someone stupid enough to provoke them. The human stepped forward and spoke two words that sealed the fate of the Zorvac Empire. Your turn. General Vorka had seen battlefields turn to slaughterhouses before. He had led conquests where entire species were wiped out before they even had a chance to resist. But this was different. This wasn't just military defeat. This was psychological warfare. The humans were not fighting with brute force alone. They were fighting with fear. The armored humans standing before Vorka radiated an unnerving calm. Their troops, now fully in control of the bridge, moved with terrifying efficiency, securing key stations, overriding controls, cutting off any last hope of resistance. The general's mind raced. He had trained for war. He had trained for combat. But how did you fight an enemy that had already infiltrated your systems, your ships, and now your mind? A Zorvik officer, trembling, took a step forward. "General, though we should surrender." The words sent a shockwave through the room. The Zorvik Empire did not surrender. They were feared across the galaxy. They were conquerors. But now, standing here, unarmed, outmatched, and hunted, Vorka saw the truth. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The human leader took a step closer, eyes locked onto Vorka. "You invaded our home. You tried to exterminate us. And now," the human tilted their head slightly, "you're afraid." Vorka snarled, his pride demanding resistance, but his instincts screamed the truth. They were already dead. A voice crackled through his communicator. It was Admiral Korath, still trapped somewhere in the chaos. "General, our fleets are breaking apart. We can't stop them. The transmission cut off." Vorka turned to the human, his throat dry. "What did you do?" The human's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "We didn't have to do anything. You're doing it yourselves." Vorka's blood chilled. The humans had turned his own army against itself. The psychological assault was relentless. Zorvak soldiers, once unbreakable, had started abandoning their posts, their instincts overriding years of training. Entire squads had begun fleeing, too terrified to stand against the unknown. Vorka's legs felt weak. His empire's greatest warriors were not being crushed by superior firepower. They were running. The flagship shook violently as another explosion tore through the fleet. More ships were being lost every second, but it wasn't just because of human firepower. It was because the Zorvak stopped fighting. The humans had broken them. The human leader looked at Vorka one last time, then turned to their troops. "Send the message." A soldier pressed a button. Within seconds, a broadcast was sent across the entire Zorvik fleet. A simple, haunting message. "The war is over. Lay down your arms, or be hunted." And just like that, the Zorvik Empire collapsed. General Vorka stood frozen, his mind spiraling into chaos. The Zorvik Empire, feared across the galaxy, had never known defeat. Yet here, in a single battle, they had been shattered. The broadcast's impact was immediate. Across the fleet, Zorvak soldiers abandoned their posts. Some attempted desperate escape maneuvers, but their ships, crippled by human interference, refused to respond. Others surrendered outright, too shaken to resist. The humans had done the unthinkable. They hadn't just beaten the Zorvik Empire. They had made them afraid to fight. A nearby officer trembled, his claws gripping the edge of a console. "General, our forces, they're surrendering." His voice cracked with disbelief. "Even our dreadnoughts, our strongest ships, are shutting down their weapon systems." Vorka's claws curled into a fist. "Cowards." He turned to the human leader, hatred burning in his eyes. "Do you think this is victory?" He snarled. "You've won a battle, but the Empire..." The human tilted their head slightly, unbothered. "The Empire," they chuckled softly. "There is no Empire anymore." Vorka's blood ran cold. For a moment, he refused to believe it. Impossible. The Zorvik Empire spanned hundreds of worlds. It was a juggernaut, an unstoppable force. And yet, the reality was undeniable. Without its fleet, without its fearsome reputation, without its unquestionable dominance, the Zorvik Empire was nothing but a hollow name. And the humans had crushed it in a single night. A sudden, violent explosion rocked the flagship. The last of the resistance had been eliminated. Every remaining Zorvak ship had either been disabled or surrendered. The battlefield was silent, except for Earth. Vorka's gaze snapped to the planet below. The humans hadn't even mobilized their full forces. Most of them were still going about their lives. The war that had just destroyed an empire had barely registered as a disturbance to them. And that was the most terrifying part. They weren't just powerful. They were accustomed to chaos, built for it. "Your fleet is gone," the human continued, voice cold. "Your forces have surrendered. There is no more fight left in you." They stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Now you answer for what you've done." Vorka's breath hitched. Answer. What did that mean? A sharp signal rang through the bridge. The humans were transmitting another message, not just to the remaining fleet, but to the entire galaxy. The human leader's voice echoed across the comms. "The Zorvik Empire is no more. Their war crimes will not go unpunished, and to any who would follow in their footsteps." A pause. Then, a final, chilling statement. "Earth is watching." The galaxy would never be the same. General Vorka had fought countless wars. He had seen planets burn, watched empires kneel before the Zorvak war machine, and crushed rebellions without mercy. Yet now he stood as a prisoner aboard his own flagship. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, restraining him and the last of his officers. The once mighty Zorvak generals, feared across the galaxy, now stood in chains. The human leader, the one who had orchestrated this crushing victory, stood before him, arms crossed. Their eyes were not filled with hatred. There was no gloating, no cruelty, only judgment. "Do you understand what you've done?" the human asked. Their voice was calm, controlled, dangerous. Vorka bared his fangs. "I did what was necessary for my people to survive." The human's gaze didn't waver. "You slaughtered entire civilizations. You wiped out species who couldn't defend themselves. You burned worlds for your empire's expansion." A screen flickered on behind them. Footage played. Zorvak warships laying waste to helpless planets, civilians fleeing in terror, entire cities erased in a matter of seconds. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. Vorka snarled, refusing to cower. "You think you're better than us. You think you don't have blood on your hands." The human stepped forward, leaning in slightly. "The difference, General, is that we never started this war. We don't conquer. We don't exterminate. But when someone comes for us," they gestured at the ruined Zorvik fleet outside the viewport, "we finish it." Vorka clenched his fists. His empire had been unstoppable. No one had dared to challenge them. And yet, in a single day, humans had reduced them to nothing. The human leader gave a small, unreadable smile. "We're sending a message to the rest of the galaxy." A new transmission was being prepared. This time, it wasn't just going to the Zorvak remnants. It was going to every major civilization in the known universe. The words appeared on the screen, clear and unmistakable. "The Zorvak Empire has fallen. Justice will be served. To any who seek war, Earth is watching." The impact would be immediate. The power balance of the entire galaxy had shifted in an instant. Vorka realized, with sinking horror, that the humans weren't just victors in battle. They had changed the course of history. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with them. The transmission was sent. Across the galaxy, leaders, warlords, and civilizations watched as the mighty Zorvik Empire fell, not in a long, grueling war, but in a single decisive battle. Some were horrified, others were in awe. But all of them understood one thing: humanity was not to be challenged. General Vorka remained silent, his once proud posture now slumped. He had lived his entire life believing in the supremacy of the Zorvik Empire, in their right to dominate the weak. Yet here he was. His empire lay in ruins. His fleet was gone. His people, once feared, were now begging for mercy. And the humans, they weren't even celebrating. The human leader studied him for a long moment. "We could have wiped you out." Vorka's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you?" The human's expression remained unreadable. "Because we don't destroy for sport." They turned toward the viewport, looking at the wreckage of the once mighty Zorvik fleet. "But make no mistake, there are consequences for what you've done." A new signal pulsed through the system. The surviving Zorvik forces, now leaderless and broken, received a directive from Earth's Central Command. The Zorvik Empire was to be dismantled. Its occupied worlds were to be freed. Its warlords would stand trial. And its soldiers, they would be given a choice. Serve as peacekeepers, working to undo the damage their empire had caused, or be exiled, forever banished from positions of power. For the first time in its history, the Zorvak species would know what it was like to live without conquest. Vorka clenched his jaw. You think the galaxy will accept you after this? That they won't fear what you've done? The human turned back to him, their gaze steady. Good. Vorka felt an unfamiliar chill crawl down his spine. The humans had sent their message. They were not conquerors. They were not invaders. But if anyone dared to threaten them, to challenge their right to exist, they would end them. The bridge of the flagship remained silent as the human forces began their final operations. Across the battlefield, escape pods were recovered, prisoners were secured, and the remaining Zorvik ships were either disabled or escorted away. Humanity had proven itself that day, not as tyrants, not as monsters, but as a species that could never be controlled. The galaxy would never forget. As the human fleet prepared to return home, the last words of the transmission echoed through the stars. To all who believe themselves untouchable, Earth is watching. And with that, the new age began.